Hello and welcome to Bristol Reptile Emporium's YouTube channel. I'm Gayle.
And I'm Michelle.
And today we are going to talk about bioactive setup. This is going to be just an introductory video of a general overview to help people who are new into the reptile industry and want to know what bioactive is. So Michelle, what is bioactive?
It's really daunting, isn't it, as a term?
It is, yeah.
You know, you're doing some research and you come across this term bioactive and you're like, well, hang on, I've just worked out I want to keep an animal and now I'm going bioactive. So bioactive is not something that you have to do with a setup, but it's something that some owners like to do with their setups, and it's just a different way of controlling an environment, which can have an effect on maintenance levels. And the animal can interact differently with this type of environment to something that's a bit more clinical.
Yeah, so it's just trying to provide a more natural environment for your reptile, something which they may be used to if they were from the wild.
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. So we're going to talk through each stage in the enclosure, so I think best if we start at the bottom and work our way up. Would that make sense?
Yeah, it'll give us a good foundation.
Absolutely. So what goes on the very bottom of your bioactive setup?
So this is things like the bioactive drainage media. Basically, it gets called loads of different names, loads of different terms, depends who the manufacturer is as to what they call it, but it is a drainage layer really.
Okay.
And that sits right on the base of the enclosure in contact with the bottom of the enclosure.
And what is its purpose?
So it prevents, when we've got enclosures which have got really high levels of humidity being put into it, what it does is it gives you somewhere for the water to drain down into, and that means that that water is not sat in your substrate layer. Obviously, if we are doing that on a regular basis, we can have like pooling of water and like flooding effect. And also, if we're using live plants in an enclosure, some plants don't like to be sat in water, and if they're sat in water all the time, it can affect whether they live or die basically. So it can help us when we're not only just providing for an animal, but when we're trying to keep plants alive as well.
Okay, great. So I guess there must be something on top of that before the substrate goes on, because these are little sort of clay balls, and if you've got a very fine substrate, it's going to go through it, isn't it?
Yeah, so when I did my first bioactive setup, I made that mistake. I put my media in, my drainage media, and then I put my substrate on the top. And what happened was, it was fine for 6 months or so until I had to do my first maintenance. And when I was doing my big first lot of maintenance, because bioactive is low maintenance, not no maintenance. So don't fall into that trap of thinking, I'm going to do this bioactive and then I'm never going to have to clean it out, because that's not how it works. It helps reduce it for you, but not prevent it. And if they get mixed in together, when you do come to do maintenance, or if you're putting new plants in and stuff like that, you end up with a claggy, soggy, horrible mess that you've got to try and deal with.
Yeah, not nice. So what actually goes on the next layer then?
So that's things like these.
Right, okay.
So these are mesh. They come in different mediums themselves, so you'll see some that are fleece, some that are mesh, some that have got bigger holes, some that have got smaller holes. Depending on the types of mediums that you're using, that will affect the type of mesh that you might want to choose. But it just is a physical barrier to prevent those two layers becoming mixed together.
Great, that's good to know. We've got another one here, which is a black one, just to show that there are different types of mesh. So you've got your bio drain, you've got your mesh, and then you've got your substrate. So what substrate presumably is different depending on what animal you're enclosing?
It definitely is. And if you're doing something like a arid bioactive setup, you might not need hydro balls, because obviously you don't have the humidity to deal with. So different setups are done slightly differently, and in turn you use different substrates because of that. So we've got a few different types here. So Gayle's got two over on this side of the table, and it's just, you know, a little bit different depending on what you as a keeper may like and what your requirements are for that setup. I've also got, so these are like cocoa fibre mixes. The BioLife for Forest is designed for plant growth. It helps with retention of moisture and things like that for your plants, but it'll still pass through. You've got cocoa fibre by itself, which some people use, and at the back here we've got an orchid bark as well. Some people use one, some people mix loads of them together. It's just a case of having a go and seeing what works in that setup in that case.
Okay, great. And then we have something that actually goes within the substrate itself, don't we?
Are you talking?
I am talking about the cleanup crew.
Oh, you like this one?
I know, this is interesting, this one.
So I threw this one into the mix because this is what we hear it referred to quite a lot in the shop. So when back in the day, when people were talking to me about cleaner crew, we were talking about marine fish tanks. But this term has transferred over onto reptiles, which is quite nice because it's a good round term. We all generally know what we're referring to. So cleaner crews are all the little bugs that we pop in the bottom to help regulate the organic matter that is in the bottom of the enclosure. So this could be detritus from your plant growth, so that might be leaf litter and things like that. And it can also incorporate elements of waste into it as well.
Right, okay.
So their main job is to consume the stuff that you don't want to be there, basically. And cleaner crews can be made up of loads of different types of insects, but the main popular ones are springtails and woodlice, tropical woodlice. Tropical woodlice come in a few different colours and they vary in size, so depending on the animals that you're keeping, that can affect the choice of what you want to use, if that makes sense.
And again, you purchase it in a tub like this?
So most reptile shops now will have them for sale in store. They can come in different size tubs and have a selection of different types in them. And yeah, it's just a case of buying that and whacking it in the enclosure.
Great, okay. So what's next?
Well, I suppose it's the pretty bit, really.
Right.
So this is really down to how you dress the enclosure. So we've got our base layer, we've got our mesh, we've got our substrate, and now it's all about the dressing of it. And no two customers will do that the same. Obviously, you can go bioactive and not have live plants, or you can go fully bioactive and you can incorporate live planting into it as well. Obviously, we're then keeping 3 elements within the enclosure. So we're keeping the animal itself, we're keeping the cleaner crew, and we're keeping the plants. So that takes something which for some people is quite intense already to a whole new level. And this is the challenge of bioactive. So some people have set up bioactive and it takes 6 months, a year, 2 years for them to be like, bang on, I got it. Do you know what I mean? Because there are quite a few variables that can affect how things respond.
But also very rewarding because you've got the animal and the plants which you're growing and cultivating and looking after, aren't you? And loving and caring.
Get it spot on and you'll be taking the plants out because they'll be growing so well.
For your next bioactive enclosure.
Well, the more the merrier.
Great. Okay, so we've got our plants and, you know, we've designed it. Anything else that we need in our enclosure?
So it's about having the extras that help us, basically. So incorporating with the plants, we can use things like live moss, and we can also, if we don't like the live moss quite so much, because not everybody gets on with it, it's quite a tricky thing to grow. It needs quite particular requirements in regards to light and moisture. You may choose to incorporate things like sphagnum moss into the enclosure. It comes in a couple of different forms, slightly more brown version, and you can get green variants of it, and also things like frog moss, stuff like that as well. And then part of what we're doing for the cleaner crew is if the system is maintaining itself well and there's not excess nutrients, we may have to put some additional food sources in for those too. So we've got things like leaf litter, which obviously help with the natural effect of the enclosure, but they're using it as nutrients as well.
Oh, okay.
And obviously think about the cleaner crew. The cleaner crew is providing additional nutrients for your plants because they're taking something which is in a solid form, breaking it down into a smaller form, and they can absorb the nutrients from that too.
Right, okay, great. So what's next?
So we've got other things on the table which you might not necessarily think, oh, you know, I definitely need that for bioactive, and you might not. We're not saying that this is 100% what you need for every bioactive. We've just cherry picked a few items. We popped on the table heating because depending on the setup, different heating options are available, and there's just a few things there. And also we've popped down a couple of different types of LED lighting systems. There's new ones coming out on the market all the time. They vary dramatically in price, size, capability, but they provide that red and blue spectrum that plants need to grow. So if you've only got UV light nutrients on an enclosure, plants are going to struggle because it's not the right light spectrum that they require. So us as humans, we're rubbish. We just see a white light and we think that's light. Do you know what I mean? But there's a whole spectrum of light that our eyes incorporate to make white light, and that sometimes is short for one type of plant or, you know, different species.
Absolutely. So we also need to provide water. We've got 2 different things here for water.
Yeah, we've kind of got high-tech, low-tech options.
We have, yes.
So low-tech, traditional, spray bottle. There's nothing wrong with it.
No.
It works.
It works, absolutely.
Or your other end of the scale, which Gayle quite likes because she's a bit of a techie, so she likes to play with these types of things.
Not what you mean. Yeah, it's this one.
So the Monsoon is great. It's basically a mister system. They come in a few different sizes. They've got program systems that are built into the top of them, so you don't have to worry about separate timers and all that sort of stuff. And you can set them up on different setups, so with different numbers of nozzles and all sorts of things like that. So it's really a case of tailoring this to your need, and you can go as high tech or as low tech as you prefer with your setup. And also that can affect with budgets as well. You know, might be something you start off with something like this, and then that's something that you decide to move on to later on.
Absolutely, your bioactive setup can evolve as you do, as you learn more and as you want to increase it and spend more money on it. So we've got all of these products, absolutely amazing. Are there any things that we need to be aware of?
There's quite a few. Where would you like to start?
I don't know. The cleanup crew, is there anything we need to be aware of with them?
Yeah, so we've got both ends of the spectrums with the cleanup crew. So some enclosures, and depending on the animals that you're keeping within the enclosures, the cleanup crews will do really well and they'll self-populate, and you may even find that you get overpopulated with your cleanup crew, and you may have to regulate it, and that can be part of the maintenance where we have to remove some individuals because they're kind of harassing our animals, and it's just a bit of a conflict of interest really.
Right, okay. Anything else that we need to be aware of?
With your cleanup crew, you can have the flip side of that as well. So you could have a scenario where you've got an animal that may perceive them as a food source. And when that happens, obviously, that's fine, it's not a problem, it's an additional nutrient, and it's something that they will have different nutrients that our live food may not normally contain, so it's brilliant, but it means that we may need to buy some more occasionally and top up and allow for the fact that our animals do that. At home, my poison darts are notorious for eating the white tropical woodlice. So every now and again, just pop another tub in.
Okay, great. So, bioactive, absolutely amazing, provides a great environment for your animal. And can be really interesting to look after, not just for the actual animal but for the plants, and you can see the work that the cleanup crew does and all that type of stuff. So if it's something that you're interested in for your animal, get in touch. You can either contact us or go and talk to your local pet shop, as they should all have the knowledge.
Yep, everybody is talking about it. It's becoming more and more popular, and with a little bit of planning and a bit of trial, you should get on fairly well with it. So here's one of the bioactive setups that we've made in store as a display for customers, and as you can see, we've got the drainage layer at the bottom here, and then you may just be able to see the mesh in between the drainage layer and then the substrate. In this case, we've used a cocoa fibre, and then we've got incorporation of leaf litter, and you can start to see above here that the plant level is growing fairly well. This one's been set up for about 2 to 3 months now, so they're really becoming established. Don't actually have any livestock in this enclosure currently. We're really focusing on the plant growth, and that's something that the customer can decide, depending on the species, what they want to use it for.
Thank you for watching Bristol Reptile Emporium's YouTube channel.
Don't forget to subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you next week for another video. Bye!
Bye!